When my brother walked onto that stage, wearing his uniform, surrounded by generals and top military brass, I was sitting in the last row. Alone. No one noticed me. No one expected anything from me. My mom had just told someone I never really figured life out. My dad hadn't looked at me once, but then, right in the middle of the ceremony, the general stopped, pointed straight at me, and said, "Wait. You're the Strategic Command Head?" The whole room went silent. My name is Kaya Monroe. I'm 38 years old. I work in national security, specializing in military strategy and intelligence operations. You've probably never heard my name, and that's by design. Most of the work I do is behind the scenes. Quiet. Off the record. But important. My family doesn't know any of that. I'm the one who drifted. The one who didn't fit in. The one who never measured up to my brother, Aaron. Aaron was always the favorite. He was charming, athletic, and followed exactly in my dad's footsteps. My dad, Carl Monroe, is a retired Marine. He raised us with discipline, structure, and high expectations. For him, respect had to be earned, and in his eyes, Aaron earned it. I didn't. My mom, Evelyn, is the kind of woman who cares about appearances. She used to tell people I was still figuring things out, even when I was earning 2 degrees and working for defense contractors. She didn't mean to be cruel. She just didn't understand my world. She couldn't explain it to her friends. So she acted like it didn't matter. Growing up, I was always reading, always asking questions, always curious about how things worked. I was quiet. I didn't want to join the military. I didn't want to be on the front lines. I wanted to be the one making the plan, but no one in my family saw value in that. They saw me as the outsider. The weak link. Even when I went back to school and finished my master's in strategic analysis, I didn't tell them. When I got hired by a major federal agency, I kept it to myself. I was tired of hearing them downplay everything I did. We barely talked for years. But then, Aaron invited me to his defense briefing. He had been working with a high-level task force, and the military was honoring him for his service. I was proud of him. I really was. And I thought, maybe this time would be different. Maybe they'd see me. Maybe I'd finally feel like part of the family again. So I bought a plane ticket, took time off, put on a black dress, and walked into that auditorium by myself. My parents were already there. Surrounded by friends, smiling, shaking hands, proud as ever. I didn't go over. I didn't want to make it awkward. Instead, I slipped into the last row, out of sight. Just how they've always preferred me, and yet, I had no idea what was about to happen next. I sat in the back row of that massive auditorium, knees crossed, hands in my lap, pretending I didn't notice the stares. Most people didn't know who I was, but a few of them looked my way, probably wondering if I was lost. The room was filled with decorated officers, military families, and proud parents. Everyone seemed to have someone with them, except me. Up front, my parents sat like royalty. My mom wore a deep red blazer with gold buttons. My dad had his military pins on his lapel, even though he'd retired over a decade ago. It was all for show. They loved being the center of attention, especially when it came to Aaron. And this was his moment. Aaron had always been their pride. I remember once, when he got a leadership award in high school, my dad threw a barbecue in his honor and invited half the neighborhood. When I got accepted into my graduate program, no one even mentioned it at dinner. That was normal in our house. If it wasn't physical, visible, or tied to the military, it didn't count. The ceremony began with a slideshow of Aaron's recent deployment. Photos of him with his team, flying in helicopters, coordinating missions. He looked strong, focused. Exactly how my parents always pictured a real success story. My mom clapped after every photo. My dad sat tall with his arms crossed, nodding like he'd built Aaron from scratch. I sank a little lower in my seat, then I heard my mother's voice from a few rows ahead. She was leaning over, whispering to someone I didn't recognize. She came in late, she said. Kaya. That's my daughter. She's not in the military or anything. Never really figured out what she wanted to do. I felt my stomach twist. She said it like I wasn't even in the room. Like I was a footnote in my own family. The woman next to her gave a tight smile, and my mom kept talking. She's smart, but not like Aaron. He always had direction. I wanted to disappear. I turned my face slightly, trying not to show how much it hurt. I'd spent the last 10 years building a career in one of the most intense, competitive fields in the country. I'd worked on high-level military simulations, advised combat leaders, helped write operations that literally saved lives. But in this room? None of that mattered. All they saw was a daughter who didn't wear a uniform. I thought about leaving. My heart was racing, my hands felt cold, and every part of me wanted to get up and walk out before they noticed I was crying. I stared at the exit sign near the side door. It would be easy. Quiet. Just a few steps and I'd be gone, but then I thought about the reason I came. I hadn't shown up for them. I showed up for my brother. Despite everything, I wanted to be there to support him. And more than that, I didn't want to keep shrinking myself just because they chose not to see me. So I stayed. I sat up straight, wiped my palms against my skirt, and took a deep breath. Let them talk, let them think I failed. I knew who I was. When Aaron stepped up to speak, the audience leaned in. He talked about teamwork, about sacrifice, about the tough calls they'd had to make. I watched him closely. He looked confident, collected, like a man who had earned every stripe. I felt a quiet pride in him, despite all the years we'd barely spoken. He was still my little brother. Then, just as he was finishing, General Hastings stood up to take the podium. The room shifted with attention. The general had a serious, commanding presence. People respected him. He began talking about the strategic planning that had supported Aaron's mission. I froze. I recognized the language. The details. The phrasing. He was talking about my work. I kept my eyes down, heart pounding, trying to stay still. There was no way he'd mention names, I thought. Everything I did was classified, but then he stopped mid-sentence. He looked up, scanning the crowd, and his eyes landed on me. The moment General Hastings looked in my direction, I felt like the air was pulled out of the room. I wasn't sure at first. Maybe he was just glancing around, or maybe I was imagining it. But then his eyes locked on mine, and I knew. He didn't just see me. He recognized me. I sat frozen, unsure of what to do. I hadn't expected this. I wasn't supposed to be part of the ceremony, not officially. My role was always behind the curtain, analyzing, planning, coordinating, never on stage, never in public. That's how I liked it. That's how it had to be. The general paused. He tilted his head slightly, still looking at me. Wait a second. He said, slowly and clearly, into the microphone. Is that Kaya Monroe? My heart slammed in my chest. I could feel the heat rushing to my face. My body told me to shrink, to hide, but my mind held firm. I lifted my chin just enough to acknowledge him. A small nod. Nothing more. Now the entire room was turning. Heads swiveled. Whispers started. I heard someone in front of me say, "Who's she?" The general smiled, not in a mocking way, but like someone proud to have found a hidden piece of the puzzle. You're the strategic command head, aren't you? And just like that, the whispers stopped. Silence took over. I sat up straighter, looked him in the eye, and answered with a steady voice, "Yes, sir." He laughed, the kind of laugh that carried both surprise and admiration. "Well, I'll be damned," he said. "Ladies and gentlemen, this woman right here is the reason our entire mission didn't go sideways. Her simulation plans saved us weeks of guesswork. Every decision we made it with her data. She was our eyes when we had none." I could feel the tension shift. The silence turned into awe. My parents, sitting up front, turned around. Slowly. My mom's mouth was slightly open, like she wanted to say something but couldn't find the words. My dad looked like he'd seen a ghost. His back, always so straight, slumped slightly. It was like they were seeing me for the first time, but had no idea who I actually was. I didn't know where to look. I focused on the general. He went on to explain how my team had built real-time simulations and predictive models for combat zones Aaron's unit was deployed in. He didn't reveal sensitive details, but he said enough for the room to understand I wasn't just involved, I had helped shape the very mission they were celebrating. He ended by saying, she didn't need to wear a uniform to serve her country. She's one of the most brilliant minds we have. I could barely process what was happening. It was overwhelming, but not in a bad way. It was like everything I'd kept locked inside, the years of silence, the moments I'd been ignored or dismissed, it all cracked open. I wasn't invisible anymore. As he stepped away from the podium, the audience burst into quiet applause. Not loud or dramatic, but respectful. Controlled. Military style. But it was real. They were clapping for me. I looked down for a second, letting the moment sink in. My palms were still sweating. My heart still raced. But I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time, seen. Not for what I wasn't, but for who I actually was. Aaron turned slightly. At the front. He hadn't said anything yet, but his eyes found mine. He looked surprised, but not upset. Just stunned. Like he was realizing how much he never knew about his own sister. And for the first time in years, I saw something in his expression that looked a lot like respect. The ceremony moved on, but the energy in the room had shifted. I hadn't planned on being noticed. I didn't go there to prove anything. But in that moment, standing in the back row with every eye on me, I realized something important. I didn't need their approval. I had earned something stronger, recognition from people who understood what my work meant. And even if my family never saw me the way I wanted them to, the truth was finally out. Not in a dramatic speech. Not by yelling or begging for attention. Just by standing still and letting the truth speak for itself, and for the first time in my life, that was enough. After the general stepped away from the microphone, the auditorium didn't return to normal. Something had shifted. I could feel it in the stillness. I wasn't just another quiet face in the crowd anymore. The moment he called my name, the entire narrative of who I was, at least in that room, completely changed. I stayed in my seat. Not wanting to draw more attention to myself, but people around me were still looking, whispering, exchanging surprised glances. A few of them even smiled at me politely, like they were suddenly proud to be sitting near me. That felt strange. For so long, I had worked in silence. Most of my career had been about protecting others without ever needing to be seen. Now, just a few words from the general had brought all of that into the light. I kept my eyes forward, watching as Aaron returned to the stage to close out his part of the ceremony. He glanced over his shoulder and looked at me again. There was something different in his face now, more than just surprise. He looked curious. Like he was seeing me with fresh eyes. Maybe even wondering what else he didn't know. I remembered. When we were kids, how he used to tease me for always having my nose in a book or staying up late doing math problems for fun. Back then, he thought it was weird. I think we both did. He had always been the golden child, the leader, the one people followed. And I had been the quiet one, hiding my ideas in notebooks, always in the background. We'd grown apart in every possible way, but now, in this moment, he looked at me not like a stranger, but like a brother who had just realized his sister was someone important. Someone powerful. When the final round of applause came, the crowd stood. My parents rose with them, clapping with everyone else. I watched my mother carefully. Her hands moved, but her face looked unsure, almost blank. Like her mind was racing to catch up. I knew that expression. It was the face she wore when she didn't know how to explain something to herself, let alone to other people. My father, on the other hand, stood stiffly, not looking back at me at all. His jaw was tight, eyes forward, as if he refused to give the moment any more weight. Maybe it was pride. Maybe it was discomfort. I didn't know. And honestly, I wasn't sure I cared anymore. After the ceremony, people started to move around, shaking hands, offering congratulations. I stayed in my seat, letting the crowd thin out before I stood. I wasn't in a rush. I needed a minute to take it all in. What had just happened didn't just change how others saw me, it changed how I saw myself. Aaron made his way toward me. Before anyone else. He walked down the aisle, still in his dress uniform, his eyes never leaving mine. When he reached me, he paused for a second, like he didn't know how to start. "That was you?" he asked quietly. I nodded. "Yeah." He let out a breath and smiled, not big, but real. You should have told me. I tried, I said. But no one ever really listened. He didn't argue with that. He just looked down and nodded again. I had no idea you were doing all that, he said. What you built, it saved us. It really did. I felt my throat tighten, but I didn't cry. Instead, I just looked at him and said, I'm glad you're safe. That's all I ever wanted. He stepped forward and hugged me, tight and without hesitation. For a few seconds, we stood there, brother and sister, two people who had gone years without really talking, finally meeting somewhere in the middle. As he pulled back, I saw my parents standing near the exit. My mom was watching us. She looked unsure, like she wanted to come over but didn't know what to say. My dad stood behind her, arms crossed, unreadable. I didn't move toward them. I didn't need to. I had spent so much of my life chasing their approval, aching for them to say, we're proud of you. But now, standing there with my brother's arms still around me and the memory of that room turning silent in my head, I realized something. I didn't need their words anymore. The truth had already spoken louder than they ever could. The crowd had mostly cleared out by the time I reached the side exit of the auditorium. Outside, the late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the concrete. I stood near a column for a moment, adjusting the strap on my bag, breathing in the cool air. I could still feel the echo of the moment when the general pointed at me. It was strange how one sentence from a stranger could undo years of silence, could change everything and yet somehow change nothing. Aaron had gone back inside to talk to some of his team. He gave me another quick hug before he left, promising to call me soon. For once, I believed him. Not just out of politeness, but because I saw it in his eyes, he truly meant it. Something had shifted between us. He looked at me now with understanding. Not just surprise. That alone was enough to carry me through the rest of the day. As I walked toward the parking lot, I heard someone behind me. My mother, Kaya, she called out softly. I turned. She looked smaller than she had in the front row. Her blazer didn't seem as sharp in the daylight. She stepped closer, slowly, like she was walking toward something fragile. Her eyes searched mine. Why didn't you ever tell us what you do? She asked. I waited a second, then answered without anger. You never asked. She looked down, lips pressing together. I could tell she was replaying all the conversations she didn't have with me. All the chances she missed. We just thought, you were still trying to figure things out, she said. I replied. But I figured it out a long time ago. I just didn't think you'd want to hear it. There was no bitterness in my voice. I wasn't there to hurt her. I was just telling the truth. For the first time, maybe ever, I felt like I could say what I really felt, calmly, without apology. She stepped back, still holding my gaze. I'm sorry, she said, her voice catching. I didn't know. I really didn't. I nodded, not with forgiveness, but with understanding. I didn't need her to fix the past. I just needed her to finally see it. And in that moment, I think she did. My dad didn't come over. He stood near the entrance, hands in his pockets, watching. He gave me a small nod from a distance. That was the most I'd get from him. Maybe the most I ever would. And that was okay, because I had already made peace with something important. I wasn't living for their approval anymore. For years, I tried to twist myself into a version they could be proud of, louder, flashier, more like Aaron. But the truth is, I had built something powerful in silence. I had earned my place without ever needing the spotlight. And in that quiet work, I had helped protect people I would never meet. I had led missions without ever stepping onto a battlefield. I had served in ways they couldn't understand, and finally, someone had recognized that. But here's what surprised me most. That recognition didn't change who I was. It didn't make me feel bigger. It didn't fill some empty space inside me. Because somewhere along the way, I had already stopped needing it. That's the part no one tells you about being unseen for so long. You either break, or you build something unshakable inside yourself. And I built something. Walking to my car, I felt lighter. Not because my family finally saw me, but because I no longer needed them to. I had chosen to sit in the back row, not out of shame, but out of peace. I had nothing to prove. As I started the engine and pulled away, I looked in the rearview mirror. The building faded behind me. But the lesson stayed clear in my mind: you don't have to be in the spotlight to matter. You don't need to be seen to be significant. And sometimes, the people who doubt you the most are just too small to understand the size of your story. I had spent so long trying to be enough for them. But I was always enough. I just had to stop waiting for someone else to say it.